748 here, Big 550 KTRS. The ongoing battle between the St. Louis Taxi Cab Commission and Uber and Lyft and those ride-sharing apps continue. The St. Louis Taxi Cab Commission responded to Edward Domain, who was on the show last week. He wrote an open letter claiming all sorts of things, that he was in an accident with a Harris Cab. They had no insurance, and Harris Cab is still allowed to be on the road even though they had no insurance. Why is it that Uber is not allowed to be on? It was an open letter. He called out everyone in that letter and all over the media, and the Metropolitan St. Louis Taxi Cab Commission has now responded with an open letter to Edward Domain. And to talk about that is Neil Bruntrager, Metro Taxi Commission attorney. Neil, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Is that fair to say that this is an open letter back to Edward Domain?
It is. What we're trying to do is make sure that we set the record straight on those facts that we can get to. Now, this is by no means a done deal. We are still looking into a number of things, but at least for the present, we wanted to make sure that people did have the facts as they existed. And I caution people, you have to be extremely careful and make sure that you check the facts. And that's what we've put forward.
Okay. He said on this show last week that he got into an accident and Harris Cab had no insurance.
Well, he did get into an accident, certainly, and he was grievously injured. And there's no question about that. There's certainly no dispute as to that. There is a question, however, as to exactly what Harris Cab had. Now, I need to make sure that you understand. I represent the Taxi Cab Commission. I don't represent Harris Taxi or Harris Cab.
Okay.
So again, I want to make it clear because there is still going to be a lot of investigation regarding exactly what happened. But what did appear to happen is that they had a what's called a fleet policy, and that's an insurance policy that everybody has. We, as a Taxi Cab Commission, try and monitor every car, and frankly, every car that is in a taxi cab fleet gets inspected twice a year. As part of that inspection, they have to show proof of insurance. The other thing that has to happen is that they have to have on file with us at all times a certificate of insurance. Mm-hmm. So Harris Cab had that, and the cab driver had a card. We know that because this cab that was involved in this accident was inspected just a month before the accident, and they had an insurance card. And at the time of the accident, when the police were there, they had an insurance card. Now, the significance of that is, for our purposes, the MTC's purposes, what we knew and what we could know is they had a valid policy of insurance. But the dispute that arose was the insurer in that case said, you didn't notify us, Harris Cab, that you had added this car to your fleet. Now, of course, we don't know that. Part of the reason we are on the insurance certificate, and they give us that, they put our name on that, mm-hmm. because if a cab company is in lapse, meaning that they didn't pay the insurance, we would get notified of that. But we wouldn't get notified of what happened here. So it became a dispute between Harris and their insurance company as to whether Harris had done everything they were supposed to do to add this to their policy. So again, nothing in that triggered any notice to us. And I will say this, and this is really important. This accident happened in 2013. The first that anyone came forward and told the MTC was in May of 2015. So that's a 2-year period where this all went through. And again, Mr. Domain's letter, while important, and we need to look at that, why did you wait 2 years to talk to us?
Should Harris Cab have told you that they got into I mean, this isn't a fender bender. This is a major accident where somebody almost died.
Yeah, it was. And again, what we'd like to do is make sure that we have that information. But the way the code is written right now, there's no obligation for them to notify us of something like this, of the fact that there was an insurance coverage question. Okay.
Right.
So again, it was a contractual dispute between the two of them. But if you look at the public record that's out there, what ended up happening is that Harris Cab ended up suing its insurer in a parallel case to the case that involved Mr. Domain. Those cases ended up getting somehow joined,
right.
And ultimately he got paid. Now, we don't know what that is because no one will tell us, but he has said himself, I got approximately 1/3 of my damages, which he claimed were $650,000. If you do the math, that would put it around $200,000, which, by the way, is what we mandate you have to have coverage for, which is 4 times the state limit in terms of insurance.
Okay,
coverage.
That was a lot of information. Let's go back for a second. You think he got right around $200,000 settlement, which is right, and $200,000 is the amount of insurance that you, as a Taxi Cab Commission, force companies to carry.
Right.
And in this letter, you point out that that's more than what the state mandates.
Yes, if you're just driving around in a privately owned car, you have a mandate for $25,000, $50,000 per accident. So that means any one claim gets paid $25,000. If you have 8 people in the car, you have $50,000 that gets split up among the 8. We mandate $200,000. Again, using Mr. Domain's own statements, we're figuring that that's where it had to be. We've asked for the settlement amount. We've tried to get that information directly from him or his representative, and we haven't been able to get
So
that.
even if they didn't have any dispute and there was no issue with the insurance, at most he could have gotten was $200,000 anyway.
That's right. And it comes back to his allegations are somehow that the MTC failed in monitoring these things. Well, I'd say this. If you understand what we do in terms of the semi-annual checks, where twice a year they have to come in and prove this information, and we have this situation where we're on their insurance policies, we're doing everything we can do. We'd like to do more. Translate that now into the Uber argument, where they're saying they don't want to give us any of that information. Well, frankly, we now have some information, and we are looking into this information, and we will take appropriate action based upon the information as we get it. If it's Uber, I can't do anything, McGraw.
But Uber says they carry $1 million worth of insurance.
Yeah, and if you look around the country, there have been real disputes about whether that happens. There have been attorneys general around the country who have said, we don't think their coverage is what they think their coverage is. Their coverage is excess coverage. Their coverage applies after your own individual policy is exhausted. Now, again, the problem with that is that they want individual drivers to basically provide their own private insurance. But every private insurance policy has what we call a livery exception. If you are a vehicle for hire, and Uber is a vehicle for hire, that's already been litigated last summer when Lyft tried to come in and we shut them down because they weren't doing what they were supposed to do. They're a vehicle for hire. You have no private insurance on that car. It can't be. It's accepted. So again, their policy of insurance is going to be all that's out there. So again, we want to see how that's going to work, but there have been no judicial interpretations of that policy, and frankly, we've seen places where it's been challenged.
Ed Domain has come out and made it's been a social media campaign. He's not shy about coming on this show, his open letter. He's done videos, very angry at the taxi cab commission. You're saying you've tried to reach out to him numerous times and he has not reciprocated and or sat down with you guys?
Well, we reached out to his lawyer because he was represented by counsel. So ethically, as a lawyer, I can't speak directly to someone who's represented by counsel. So we reached out to his lawyer, and ultimately he did call us back where we got some of the information. But the vast majority of what we have in there is coming from the public records. So things that we were able to go by, frankly, going to the courthouse and looking at the file. They've not been completely forthcoming on all the information because we don't know what the exact amount of the settlement was, and we don't know why they waited 2 years.
And again, the first that you heard of it was May of this year.
May of this year.
He feels, and I'm not speaking for him, but I think he would say he feels like you guys, and he has said this, coming after him. You're looking to discredit him. You're looking to somehow make an example, or you don't want his story out there.
Well, look, we've made no effort to keep his story from being out there, but we do want the facts to be out there. Look, this concept of discrediting you, I'm not trying to discredit anybody. I'm trying to make sure the facts are out there. So, and these are things that are verifiable. You can check these facts. And that's what I say, is that, look, when we say things on the air, when we say things to the public, we have to be responsible in what we say. And it concerns me greatly that there have been a number of misstatements, which is why this open letter was written.
Okay, a couple more things before we let you go. And that is, it came out that the Tax Cab Commission is going to, I guess, pass on the fingerprints. No. They're going to pass on the drug testing. They're going to, but by law, you have to fingerprint drivers.
Yeah.
Now, hold on a second.
Go ahead.
Kansas City, Missouri has Uber and Lyft. Columbia has Uber and Lyft. They don't fingerprint. Why does St. Louis have to fingerprint?
Because we have a statutory structure that mandates it. 15 years ago, the legislature decided that we needed to do something about the taxi industry in St. Louis. We needed to make sure that we frankly cleaned it up and organized this. And so they created this thing called the Metropolitan Tax Cab Commission. So we have a statute that says for St. Louis City and St. Louis County, there are rules we must follow when it comes to taxi cabs. Those same rules don't apply to St. Charles. They don't apply to Columbia. They don't apply to Kansas City. So it's apples and oranges in terms of the comparison. Our mandate to fingerprint and do these checks, and these are biometric checks that we could spend an hour on. These are checks that are actually mandated by statute that say we've got to send these up to Jefferson City and we've got to send these to the FBI for looking. Now, we have said to them, look, we'll give you a provisional license right now. You still have to submit to the checks, but we'll allow you to drive during that same time period. But we also want from you a list of all your drivers. We want all your insurance cards, and we want your own background checks. So Uber is saying that they have been doing these great background checks. Share them with us. We'll use those in conjunction to get you through that gap between the point where your fingerprints are taken and the point where
How much does it cost for a fingerprint test to go all the way up and all the way down?
$42. And we said, by the way, that we would waive that $42 in order to help them implement.
How long does it take?
It takes about 30 days, but in the meantime, we'll use their background checks. But they got to give us the information, and Uber doesn't want to do that. They don't want to give us a list of their drivers, and they don't want to give us their insurance cards. Look, this is a tech platform. They can do this with a few keystrokes and send all this to us, but they don't want to do that.
What's to stop a current taxi cab company to all of a sudden deem themselves a ride-sharing company and then get out from under the Taxi Cab Commission?
Well, that's an interesting question because, frankly, all the technology that we have that exists that creates this thing called a TNC, that all exists right now, and our taxi cabs in this area are using that technology right now. So theoretically they are, but they can't get out from underneath this particular statute because it's a vehicle for hire. And frankly, again, you can call yourself a ride share or a ride hail company. I don't care what you call it. If you're being paid to carry a person from point A to point B, you are a vehicle for hire, and you're covered by us.
Neil Bruntrager is the Metro Taxi Commission attorney. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
KTRS St. Louis, ABC News in progress.
FBI and local